On the phone with us live in Nashville, Richard Cross. Good morning, Richard. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Paul Gallo. Nashville's quite a city right now. I'm looking out my hotel room, and I can see about half a dozen cranes. There is construction everywhere. Whew, traffic was not so bad on Sunday afternoon coming in, but I wouldn't want to be in it right now.
You know, has any city in America grown as fast and as furious as Nashville? And it all based around, well, geographically they're okay. Economically, they're just blowing things out of the water. Yep. Tourism is just unbelievable. But when do you get to a point where it's almost like New Orleans, the homeless, the crime, they're dealing with both of those now exponentially year after year? That becomes a concern.
I'm sure it does. I mean, that is a very, very real problem. And you can't find a city in America that's not dealing with that to some level. I think they're doing as good a job as they can with it. What in the South? There are probably 4 cities that would fall into this category. I don't know that I don't know that any would fall into it at the level of Nashville. So Austin, Texas, which obviously is a different deal altogether. Nashville, Charlotte, and then Greenville, South Carolina is just exploding as well. So, but yeah, I mean, more money, more problems, right?
Always happens, but again, it is. Let me put it this way: if you're in Nashville, it's hard to stay in the hotel room when the sun goes down. Your business is completed. I mean, just if you're looking for something to do, you'll find a multitude of different people, and you can't take 3 feet without bumping into a country music star. And I think that's the misnomer that a lot of people who haven't been. I haven't been to Nashville in a long time. The misnomer is that it's all country now. I mean, it's every type of music. It's kind of found a home base now in Nashville.
Yeah, it's gone from Country Music USA to just kind of Music USA.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the concerts that they have at Bridgestone Arena are incredible. But Steve Azar would tell us that the whole idea of genres with music has kind of gone out the window anyway. Everybody is everything. Everybody wants to be country, and country people want to be pop, and it just all
very good point
together. There's some people that hate that, but I guess there's some people that love it. It sells a lot of records.
Let's gravitate back to sports, and it becomes the epicenter for sports, certainly in the SEC. How big a year is this one? Take any other importance in any other year, or is it just the excitement of the beginning of the football season kind of in the air?
No, I think it's the latter. This is the first time that the event has been in Nashville. Hoover, right outside of Birmingham, has been the home for SEC Media Days for, good grief, 30 years. There have been a couple of times in recent years where they have had it in Atlanta. That's where we were last year, right there at the College Football Hall of Fame, and that was good. But it's got a little bit different vibe. The SEC has kind of ramped it up a notch. They've got a big SEC football kickoff concert. There is a stage that is literally blocking Broadway down around Fifth Avenue. Saw that last night, kind of where you get into the entertainment district. And so they're trying to make this a big deal. You know, SEC Media Days has evolved a lot. If you go all the way back to the beginning, to the roots of this event, you had a bunch of writers that covered college football, that covered teams in the South who got on an old DC-9 airplane. They flew from campus to campus and would go and visit with coaches and athletics directors at their campuses. And I'm told, I think this would be a fascinating book, that that was quite the party on the back of the airplane with some of those older sports writers from along the way. But then it evolved from that into more of a centralized location in Birmingham. It was small. It has grown and grown and grown. And then when the SEC Network came along in the mid-teens, 2014, I guess it was, the event took another turn. It became more of a made-for-television event. But I don't understand. There are people that have always loved to complain about, I don't want to go to SEC Media Days. It's stupid. It's a celebration of the start of the college football season, and it's a pretty big deal where we live.
You learn anything new from this, or any of the coaches, or you just have to be stoked and you're ready for any input as far as the upcoming football season?
Yeah, I mean, I think occasionally you'll have something new that you learn. It's more like news that breaks, even if it's not. You know, there aren't many coaches that if they've got a quarterback battle, they're going to break to you who they think their starting quarterback is going to be at SEC Media Days. Nobody's looking to make headlines, but it was just 2 years ago. We were in Hoover when the news that Oklahoma and Texas were coming to the SEC broke. We were actually doing an interview on Sports Talk Mississippi while talking to someone that covers Texas A&M and is pretty involved. None of us knew, right? Because, I mean, we were actually engaged in a conversation. We weren't, glued to Twitter or whatever. And then you kind of look up and you got people that are milling around. You look down the way just a little bit. Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, is doing an interview, and there are about 15 writers that are standing waiting to get a comment from him, which, of course, there was a lot of no comment at that point. They weren't quite ready for the toothpaste to be out of the tube. But, yeah, that happens from time to time. And, interacting with the people that cover the SEC that are around these programs on a day-in, day-out basis it's a good time, and it's a fun way to start the season.
Admittedly, probably going to take more import or more excitement. I shouldn't say more excitement, but more attention will be given to the first-year coach at Mississippi State or any other first-year coach in the SEC. But that's got to be some nerve-wracking moments for him.
I mean, I think this is a big deal for Zach Arnett, right? I mean, he has handled everything that has been asked of him during this offseason and just exactly the way he should. He's, flown around the footprint in Mississippi and visited with Mississippi State fans on their Dogs tour stops, and it's not just a new head coach; it's a new athletics director as well. I mean, you've got Zach Arnett making his first media days appearance, and somebody told me that they thought Zach Selman was going to come also, which a lot of times you see with first-year ADs. They will come in just to kind of check out the landscape and see what media days is all about. They've heard about it, but maybe haven't been to it before. It's not something that most ADs come to on a recurring basis. They'll check it out one time and be like, okay, great, I'm good, and then they'll move on. But, I think exciting for Zach Selman. I think he's going to get a lot of questions, especially from the large media group about his relationship with Mike Leach and the transition from Leach to a first-year head coach and all those things. But so that'll be tomorrow. Mississippi State's here tomorrow. On Thursday, you've got Ole Miss coming in. Everybody kind of lights up when Lane Kiffin gets in the room because they're just waiting for, okay, what is he going to say that I can tweet to get a reaction? And normally he delivers something.
Go back to both of these coaches, over expectations, under expectation. I think you'd have to say over as far as Coach Arnett's concerned. Would you not, as far as what people were expecting in the recruiting year?
Yeah, I think so. The last month to 6 weeks has been really good for Mississippi State.
Yeah.
They've had some success with some in-state guys. They have built this class out pretty well. It's a good group. I mean, it's hard to get into the weeds on recruiting at this point because we're still a pretty significant ways away from National Signing Day. And with the transfer portal and the NIL stuff, it never stops. So we'll see where they finish. But this is a Mississippi State class that I think is ranked in the mid-teens at this point. Ole Miss a little bit more focused on high school recruiting this year than they've had in the last couple of years. They're still going to continue to work that transfer portal. Different philosophies in the way these two programs recruit. But, I think both pretty much both are in pretty good shape.
I was reading a story. I don't think I printed it. I was reading a story in one of the news services talking about Ole Miss and Mississippi State having a hard time keeping up with athletics as far as, the palaces, the infrastructure, because everybody's spending godly amount of money. And I thought, geez, you look at the facilities at both Ole Miss and Mississippi State, and how much more money can you put in? What are other SEC teams doing? I mean, is there a limit to this? Can you hang on for a second and answer that when we come back?
Yeah.
When we left you, we were talking about this article out there, talking about the infrastructure, donations, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not sure. Did you see that piece?
I don't know that I've read that piece specifically.
Yeah.
I will tell you that there is a challenge that exists right now for Steve Carter, for Zach Selman, for athletics directors really at schools at all levels, but especially at places that are not Texas or Texas A&M or maybe Ohio State. And the challenge is balancing the uncertainty of the NIL world, name, image, and likeness, and the dollars that are going into paying players, because that is booster funded, booster and corporation funded. And those are dollars that theoretically in the past were coming into a university's foundation and were used for facilities projects and all of those things. But it's also the uncertainty of if some sort of legislation or agreement goes into place. This is something that we talked about with Walker Jones on Thursday, I think it was last week. He's the executive director of the Grove Collective, the collective that raises money for Ole Miss for NIL purposes. If you get an agreement of some sort in place, is it a revenue sharing model with your student athletes that then takes a bite out of your budget, right? So money that you're currently using for operating expenses, is it going to come out of that? And so that challenge does exist. And I don't, it's not unique to Mississippi State and to Ole Miss. Here's the other part though, Paul. If you don't have a facilities conversation, everybody will agree that Vaught-Hemingway Stadium needs work. But it's not like it's a bad place either. Outside of that, if we're talking about Ole Miss, you're talking about a basketball arena that's 6 years old, it's $100 million, and I would implore you to find someone who doesn't say it's one of the 10 best facilities, maybe 5 best facilities for its size in the entire country. Mm-hmm. The tennis facility is fine. They just spent $5 million on golf. They have spent $45 million on baseball, give or take, in the last decade. They have completely torn down the softball stadium. They are rebuilding a softball stadium right now. Soccer is on the horizon. It just goes on and on and on. That's at Ole Miss. At Mississippi State, we're, about 6 or 7 years removed from a major expansion to the football stadium. The baseball stadium is the nicest in all of college baseball, and they spent $60 million on that. They built a new softball stadium. There's a renovation that's happening to Humphrey Coliseum right now. Facilities are not an issue at Mississippi State and Ole Miss. So not to knock a story that I haven't read, but if somebody's just saying, well, Ole Miss State can't keep up in terms of facilities, well, the facilities are pretty dang good in both Starkville and Oxford across the board. There are certainly areas where improvement is needed, but Ole Miss and Mississippi State are in the same category as basically everybody in college athletics, where they are now being far more careful in launching into a major capital campaign for facilities because of the uncertainty of where money needs to go and where that money is coming from. So last thing, and I know that was a long answer. So Ole Miss was at the Sugar Bowl, 2 years ago, and they announced a major capital campaign. It was a $400 million campaign. It included some of those projects that I was telling you about a second ago, but it also included a massive renovation to Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, tearing down the entire west side of the stadium, rebuilding suites, skyboxes, making it more fan-friendly, redoing, a lot of the infrastructure that went along with the stadium. And Keith Carter said, you know what, we're just pressing pause on that. And that used to be the most taboo thing ever. You can't launch a facilities campaign and then not follow through with it. If that meant borrowing money, if it meant, really leaning on your big donors, you couldn't stop. Well, he said, no, we're going to stop because, one, it's really expensive to borrow money right now. Interest rates are crazy. Construction costs are crazy. The cost of this project continues to go up. And I'm not sure that it's the best allocation of our resources right now because we do have a functional stadium and you're having to pay players. So there are challenges that exist right now that have never existed before.
So for the end results on this, when a kid looking at Ole Miss or Mississippi State athletic scholarship or to come to the school, and the facilities are matching pretty good, no matter where they go in the SEC. That's not going to be the thing that turns their head one way or the other. It's going to be all the other stuff, the ancillary stuff, is what you're saying, basically.
Yeah, I think so. I am more familiar with kind of recruiting philosophy for Ole Miss. I've been around Ole Miss and Oxford for a really long time. And it doesn't really matter what coach you're talking about, what sport you're talking about. They all have had the idea of if we can get a player on campus, then we've really got a shot.
Yeah.
The facilities are good on campus. The feel on campus is good. Obviously, the campus itself is beautiful. But that's kind of been their mantra. And so it's been about getting guys to campus and building those relationships. You got to sell what works for you. I guess within that facilities conversation, I didn't mention the fact that Ole Miss is, like, in the next 2 weeks, opening a $50 million enhancement to the Manning Center, the indoor practice facility.
Wow.
That's been going on for the last year and a half. I mean, it just never stops.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I got one final question.
Yep. No, to wrap that up, I was just going to say the NIL piece. So yes, in some ways, that opens up doors for Ole Miss and Mississippi State that maybe didn't exist in the past.
True.
Maybe it levels the playing field a bit for a player that, you would have had to illegally recruit in the past. Now you can do it above board, and maybe you can decide that this player matters, and you're going to pay what it takes to get him.
One final question here. I think Michael Katz, who writes for the Daily Journal, had this question. One of the things that I think will be on the minds of a lot of people, do coaches want 8 or 9 SEC games in 2025 and beyond? It's one of the things that they're going to be talking about, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's been a hotly debated issue for a really long time. The 2024 schedule is a one-year schedule. Normally we know, a decade in advance, 12 years in advance, who the teams are going to be playing in conference play. They were not able to come to an agreement at the AD and president's meetings back in the spring down in Destin. And so they settled on an 8-game one-off schedule. My guess is that it goes to 9. Starting in 2025, I think there will be enough revenue tied to that option to make everybody kind of go forward. I think it'll make for a great product too. Yeah. I mean, if you remember the COVID year, for all the problems that we had in 2020, the 10-game SEC schedule was fantastic. Now, coaches might say that was too much of a grind, but, I mean, there were no weekends where you were playing directional schools or the Sisters of the Poor or anything else. I mean, it was put on your big boy pants every single week.
I liked it.
We had great content from that. Now, in terms of the coaches, probably not. They'd probably rather play 8 games because they can have a bit of a week off mixed in when you have one less conference game. But as a consumer, as a fan, I want 9.
C-Spire text line said, tell Richard not to have too much fun. So there you go.
We'll do the best we can.
Oh, does that mean have you been by the Old Red yet and had a beer and a burger?
Old Red?
Old Red. You haven't been by the bar? That's Blake Shelton's bar in Nashville.
No, I haven't. Maybe I'll have to go see Blake.
I'm sure he's there most of the time. I have no idea, but I think he's got burgers, and I know he's got beer, so there you go. You won't have a hard time finding a burger and a beer somewhere on that avenue. So there you go. Richard, thank you, man. Appreciate it very, very much. Most enlightening. And this afternoon, who's the guest at 3 o'clock till 6?
We will be talking to some of the media folks. So you've got LSU here today. Texas A&M is here today as well, the commissioner of the SEC. So we're going to have a ton of audio cuts for you. Talk to some of the media folks that are covering the schools that are here today, and we will get you set for Mississippi State's turn at the podium tomorrow.
Tomorrow, Mississippi State, Thursday, Ole Miss. Richard, thank you, man. Appreciate it very much. Have a good one and be safe. You got it. Richard Cross.